Now, let's proceed to the second section, which has to do with due diligence. What really should one be looking out for? Recently, I've seen some meme going about on media, and people are like, if you want to purchase land in a community, that drunkard whom nobody regards, you should approach him and take him somewhere and let him give you the details of the property you are going to purchase because they seem to always know a lot more about the property. Yeah, so let's get in. Doc will take us through some of the processes, the nitty-gritties that you have to look out for when purchasing property in Ghana. Or who do you have to see? Which institutions are in charge? And how do you get there? Those major things. Doc, if you are here, you can proceed and then we take it from there. Thank you.
Yeah, hello, Godwin.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so due diligence. Now, I want to make this point. So, a big part of why people end up buying litigation or litigated land in Ghana can actually be attributed to three key things. One is that a lot of the time, people don't do due diligence, right? And even if they do it, it is poorly done, right? So these are people who don't even understand what land is, what interests there are, what type of land they are buying. And these are people who want to cut cost by not involving professionals, you know? So they end up doing the things based on their ignorance and eventually get into trouble. It is then that they try to engage the services of a professional. And so cost cutting, even though might be very good, unless you are well versed in the subject matter of land and its transactions and its relations, I would advise a professional to guide you, right? Then again, you also find that troubles a lot of people have gone have encountered is because of impatience. So I have seen people or heard of people buying land. I mean, seeing a parcel of land, let's say in 2-3 days, the person has made some valuable consideration in terms of cash for the land. Why? Because the vendor has threatened to sell the land if he or she does not make a deposit. You get it? So impatience can sometimes result in people making the wrong decisions. And then the issue, the third point I like to make before going through the process is this issue of rationality. So you realize that we are economic agents, and as rational people, we would want to maximize our benefits at the least cost. So imagine that someone is selling land at East Legon. $1,000 in East Legon. Naturally, you would want to buy it because it is cheap and it makes a lot of sense. But then we people tend to forget is that our lands in East Legon going for 5. And if the answer is no, then there might be a chance that someone is trying to defraud you, right? Because East Legon lands are not. I was reading something somewhere in a book, a very well-known book, and the professor talks about some of these issues with, litigation in Accra. And he cites the fact that sometimes these fraudsters will choose to reduce the price of the land just so they can attract so many people to the land. And so for a parcel of land that will sell for, say, $100,000, they might reduce it to, say, $10,000 or even $20,000 and sell it to multiple people. At the end of the day, they end up with $100,000, and all the other people end up with conflict because there will be multiple people claiming ownership to the land. And so if we are able to deal with these three things, this penchant for cost cutting, not engaging the services of professionals, I believe we will be making a headway. If we become more patient, and conduct the due diligence that we need to conduct, we will be making headway as well. And then also, making sure that you are paying the right price for the land can also save you some trouble. Now, let's look at a few things in terms of due diligence. Now, it is important that to avoid conflict or to avoid buying land that is in dispute, one of the things you would want to do, and I would advise you do this, is first to identify the identity and the capacity of the vendor, right? So who is trying to sell land to you? Who is that? Does the person have the capacity to sell the land to you? Now, what type of land is he trying to sell to you? And based on the type of land, we've known from the earlier segment that different people have different capacity to sell. So for instance, if the land is a family land, right, then the people with capacity to sell that land to you is a family head with the assent and concurrence of the principal members of the family. So if an ordinary member of the family claims he owns the land and he's acting on behalf of the family to sell the land to you, that might be a signal that you may be dealing with the wrong person, right? If some member of a stew, other than the occupant of the stew, with the concurrence of the principal members of the family, purport to sell land to you, then you know that you may be dealing with the wrong person. So first, you must establish the identity of this person who is trying to sell land to you and his or her capacity, right? That is very, very important. If I remember about 3 years ago, there was a certain gentleman who was trying to sell lands at Afienya. So some Afienya lands. And I was interested, but then I decided to do a sort of a search because I didn't know what his story was, that these were lands that were compulsorily acquired by the state. But then President Kufuor at some point in time released those lands to his family, right? And so now they are trying to sell off. When I went to the Lands Commission to do a search, then I realized that yes, the lands were acquired somewhere in 1977, and there is no instrument in the lands to the family. So the lands are still in the name of the state. And so I had to back off because this porting to sell the land obviously did not happen. Now, after you have established issues of identity and capacity, it is important to see the land the vendor is purporting to sell to you, right? There are instances where people have sat in their see risk. So you want to go to the site and see for yourself this parcel of land this vendor is trying to sell. Now, after you have done that, and the interesting thing is that anytime you go to the site, chances are that there are other claimants or other interested people, they might show up whilst you are there surveying the land, right? And so that is I know if a parcel of land has been sold to multiple people or not. But that is not the end. You need to do a series of checks, and usually that series of checks begin with the plan of the site. And so what a lot of people do is that they make a request to the vendor to give them a site plan, and then they use the site plan to conduct various searches, especially at the Lands Commission. Now, there's a risk here. You know, some people have made fraud their business. So they may have multiple lands for sale. Some may have an ad. And so the advice is that do not rely on the site plan provided by the vendor, because he could give you the site plan of a land that is not contested. And if you use that site plan for your due diligence, you might find that there's no trouble or issue with the land, only for you to later realize that that was the wrong site plan that was given to you, right? And so what you should do is this. Whenever you are visiting the site to inspect the parcel of land, always go with a land surveyor. Always go with the land surveyor in case the vendor has given you a site plan, right? Get a surveyor to confirm the coordinates of the site plan, right? What the surveyor will eventually do is that he will take some instruments to the site and take the coordinates and then confirm the position of the parcel. He may tell you that the coordinates coincide with what is on the site plan or not. Or if you think that is difficult, to be on the safer side, you may ignore the site plan provided by the vendor and get your own land surveyor to take the coordinates and prepare a site plan for you, right? And it is this site plan you will then go to some public institutions, particularly the Lands Commission, to conduct a search with. Okay, so when you go to Lands Commission, usually you do 3 types of search. You do a search at the Public Invested Lands Management Division, where essentially you'll be searching for the type of land. You'd want to find out if the land in question is a public or a vested land, right? And if it's a vested or a public land, then the right people with the capacity to sell the land to you is a Lands Commission. If it turns out that it is not a public or a vested land, then it's a private land. And if it's a private land, then the question is, who owns that land, right? And you will be able to find out who owns that land if that land, for instance, has been registered in the name of someone. And so the Land Registry Division will then be in the capacity to understand the ownership of that land, especially if it's a private land, right? So the search could also help you to discover registration activity on that land. And then lastly, the Survey and Mapping Division could also help you understand survey activities on the land. So if that land has been registered before, the Survey and Mapping Division will have some records of surveys they have that land, and that could help you discover the ownership of that land. Interestingly, the Lands Commission data, although it's good, does not cover Ghana, and that is because many of the land groups have not registered their lands. And so the Lands Commission doesn't have data on parcel of land in Ghana. And so it is important that you do other forms of due diligence, right? So because there is often conflict on land, it will be important you also go to the court and do a search, right? Because sometimes the land you are buying may be a subject matter of contestation or dispute in the court. So if you do a search at the court and you are cleared, then you have a greater confidence that the land you are buying might be litigation-free. Now, earlier on, we touched on the issue of development planning and of course, I mean, urban planning issues. Now, it is also the case that sometimes it is important you know the zoning of the land even before you buy it. So, for instance, if you want land to build a factory on it, however, that parcel of land is not zoned for a factory, that might be a problem in the future. And so you may also want to consult with the district assembly and the Land Use and Spatial Planning Authority to understand the zoning of that land, even before you go ahead and make payment for it. Now, if your land in question is a leasehold or is one that the vendor is purporting to grant you a leasehold. Now, it will be important that you also check with the Office of the Administrator of the Stool Lands, because that office essentially manages stool lands revenue and also helps with the efficient management and administration of stool lands, right? And so once you go there, they might hold some information on this subject parcel of land you are trying to buy, and they might give you appropriate advice on that as well. And then currently, the Lands Commission is helping the land owning groups, especially the stools, to set up what is called customary land secretariats. So an example of this customary land secretariat is the Gbawe Stool Land Secretariat. The Otumfuo Stool Land Secretariat is also an example of this. Now, these stool land secretariats or land secretariats hold information on all the lands they have transacted, right? And so it is important that you go to these land secretariats and find out from them if that parcel of land in question is one that they have information on. Because sometimes it will also help you verify the capacity of the person who is purporting to sell the land to you, right? So for instance, if it is a family land and you go and you visit the land secretariat and you realize that the people manning and managing the secretariat do not know this person who is purporting to sell this land to you, then that is a signal that someone is trying to vote you. Now, whilst after doing all of this, there's one important activity you also need to do, because all of these processes, even though they might help you build more confidence in your decision to buy a particular parcel of land, they are not foolproof, right? Because of information asymmetry, right? They may not have perfect information about the parcel of land. And so sometimes the last thing you may be required to do is to go to the community where the land is. Interestingly, the members may know the owner of that parcel of land. So as you interact with the people within the community, you might gather new information about the ownership of the land. They might even tell you whether that land is in dispute and so on and so forth. And that can help you avoid litigation. There are other things you can do once you visit the site and the community. For instance, even before you make a payment for the land, one of the things you can start doing is that you can visit the site. And in many cases, once you visit the site, you start doing some surveying work on the site. If there are other owners or other claimants to that parcel of land, they will show up. So I know a friend who bought or who made payment for some land somewhere, and just when he went to the site hoping to construct pillars, some two other people showed up, right, and laid claim to the same parcel of land. It was later on he realized that the had also sold the land to the two of them, and later on had to give him another parcel of land. We purchased some parcel of land somewhere in Oyarifa, and our strategy was from going to the community and interacting with the people, and also sending our own land surveyor to take the coordinates of the land. We also signed a sale and purchase agreement and put in there a condition of payment that we will only make payment when we have constructed a wall of the land, right? And then we went ahead and contracted someone to build the wall. So the person successfully built the wall over a period of about 2 weeks, and no one showed up, right? So that way we became more confident. If no one showed up whilst this activity was ongoing, then it could be that the one purporting to sell the land to us is the right person, because usually what will happen, the community members will send information to the owner and the person will show up. So these are processes, I believe, if you go through diligently, you would reduce your chances of buying a litigated land or a land in dispute. That these processes take time, right? It is not something you will do within a day. Look, even the Lands Commission search, what is search? I would always advise that you do the formal search, even though it takes a longer time, right? Because it is the formal search will have the signature on the report that is generated. Usually the window search is just a screenshot of some aspects of the report for you, and that one is not guaranteed. So always insist on the formal search. It will take time, it will take more money, but then it is more reliable. Always go to the court and do a search at the court as well to see if that land you are trying to buy is a subject matter of dispute. And then visit the LUSPA, that is the Land Use and Spatial Planning Authority, and the District Assembly to know the plan they have put in place for that parcel of land, to know the use and the zoning of that parcel of land. You don't want to buy a parcel of land which cannot be used for the purpose which you are acquiring it. Also, visit the Office of Administrator of Stool Lands, especially if the land is a stool land, right? You want to know if there are any liabilities in terms of ground rent that has not been paid by the vendor who is purporting to sell this land to you. And then if there are customary land secretariats, you also want to visit them. It's a way of checking the capacity of the person trying to sell to you. If it's a family land, then the land will be manned by the family, right, or agents of the family, and they can attest to the capacity of the person purporting to sell the land. And lastly, you need to visit the community. You need to visit the community and interact with your potential or future neighbors. They hold significant information that can help you avoid litigation. And if you have the resources, you may want to start doing some activity on the land. And once you start doing some activity like surveying the land or building the wall or some pillars on the land, community members will communicate to the owner or owners of the land if there are multiple owners of that land. And that can help you avoid the purchasing of litigated or disputed land. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. That was very insightful. Yes, so the takeaways: do not buy an overly cheap land. You may be preparing yourself for litigation. Do not be desperate when buying a land. That deposit can wait. That deposit can wait. Yeah, so a few takeaways that I have been able to capture. Please take note that we'll make this recording available on YouTube for you to access it anytime you want. And yes, so from there, if you have any other question regarding the due diligence process, you are free to drop it in. Use the reaction button to show your hands. We'll call you, and then you can ask your question. Maybe you are in the process of buying a particular land and you are going through some challenge. Yes, this will be an opportunity for you to, bring it on, and let's see how possible that could be discussed. Yeah, Doc, a quick one. I think the common knowledge about due diligence is mostly the Lands Commission and the Office of the Administrator of Students. You mentioned the court. I don't know how that process goes. If you want to do a search in the court, how should people go about it? What is really there that people would have to? Who should they consult when they get in there and all? Yes, I think that would also enlighten us a little bit on the court search, as you indicated.
Yeah, so okay, so for court procedures, I would advise you engage a lawyer to lead you through those processes, right? Because they basically, the court is their office, and they may have a better understanding of how it works. So a lawyer is the best person to guide you to do a search at the court.
All right. Okay.
Yes, but then you can also go to the court yourself and engage the registrars at the court if you want to do a search.
Sorry. All right. So that is about the court search. Yes. If there are any concerns, any other concerns, you can send them directly to me. I'll read them out, or you use the reaction button and let us know what questions you have, what concerns you have, and let's share some more insight. Yeah. If there are no questions, Doc, you may proceed from here and give us maybe the last bit of today's webinar. Yeah, we are left with about 30 minutes to end today's session. So, yeah, thank you.
Okay, you may want to wait a bit. Perhaps someone has a question. Okay, so since there are no questions coming up, let me do a quick summary of what we have done today. So essentially, in the first segment, I touched on the nature of land, right? And I made the point that land is not just about the surface soil, but then it includes anything that is on the land, above it, and below it. And it includes anything that is attached and affixed to it. And even more importantly, the intangible dimension of the land, which is the rights and interests held in the land. That is what helps us to define land legally, right? So essentially, when someone says that I have bought land, that is not very useful. You know, you need to understand, for instance, what type of right or interest that person has bought and what type of land he has actually bought. Is it a public land or a private land? If it's a private land, is it a stool land or a skin land? Is it a family land? Is it an individual land or a land owned by an individual? This information would help you with the identification of the processes you need to go through to be able to satisfy all the things you need to do, right? So, for instance, in terms of identifying the capacity of the person who is trying to sell, you know, in law we say that I cannot give you, or you cannot give me what you do not own or you do not have, right? And so whoever is purporting to sell the land to you must be the owner of the land, or must be the person with a certain interest in the land that he can alienate to you, right? And so if it turns out that, for instance, the land is public lands, the person purporting to sell the land to you is not the lands commission, then clearly that is a sign that someone is trying to defraud you, right? If the land is a family land, the people with the capacity to sell that, to transfer that land to you are the family head and with the assent and concurrence of the principal members of that family, right? If it's a stool land, then it is the occupant of that stool, the assent and concurrence of the principal members of that stool. And then if it's an individual land, then it could be the person who owns that land. Now, going forward, I've made the point that the interest you are purporting to buy is important. And for certain types of land, certain types of interest are not allowed. So for instance, the point was made that if the freehold interest may not exist for stool and family lands now. And so if someone is purporting to sell to you a freehold interest in a family land, then that is a signal that there's something wrong somewhere, right? If someone is trying to sell to you a freehold interest in stool land, then there might be an issue, right? And these signals are worthy of notice. Now, we moved on to then look at the second part of the presentation, which has got to do with due diligence. And here, what I've attempted to do essentially is to point out a few things you need to do in order to avoid buying disputed land. So the very first thing is that you should be able to identify the identity and capacity of the person trying to sell the land to you. As I've said, that is very crucial. And once that is established, then you can move to the site to inspect it. You see, don't sit in your room and make payment for land you have not seen. Go to the site. Once you are on the site, the community people or the people around, sometimes the other claimants might show up, right? Sometimes when you visit a site, you see that some people are being chased. There are land guards and other things on there. That might be a sign that that land is also litigated. So physical inspection is very, very important. Sometimes you go to the site that a vendor is purporting to sell to you, and you realize that someone is farming the land. The question will be, who is farming the land? Is it a vendor or is another person? And if it's another person, then who is that person? What interest does that person hold in the land? That is very crucial. Then you start your due diligence process in full gear. And here there are a number of institutions you need to visit to gather information on your parcel of land. Principal amongst them is the Lands Commission. And the Lands Commission, at the Lands Commission, 3 types of search will be conducted, although in recent, but then 3 types of search will be done at management division, at the land registration division, and then the survey and mapping division. And then a court search on the subject property, because it might be a subject of litigation in court, right? So once you are cleared, then visit the district assembly and the land use and spatial planning authority to find out about their future plans for. You may also learn about the zoning and the use to which that parcel of land has been zoned, because you don't want to buy a land that has been zoned for you intend of whether ground rents have been paid for the parcel of land. Essentially, you learn about the liabilities associated with that parcel of land if you go there. And if the ground rents have not been paid for years, let's say 50 years, then you know that there's a lot of money to be paid. And that should feed into your negotiation of the premium to be paid for that parcel of land. Then if there are customary land secretariats, you also want to visit them, because they can also help you confirm or verify the capacity of the person purporting to sell the land. And the last thing is that make sure you go to the community and interact with your future neighbors, right? They may know if that land is contested. And even if it is not contested, they may even know the true owner of the land. And if it turns out that that person is the same person as the one who is trying to sell the land to you, then hooray, you may be on your way to buying a litigation-free land. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Doc. A few questions have been placed in here. Maybe you would like to quickly address that before we proceed.
Okay.
Do you advise, this is from Madam Frisler, do you advise down payment and sales agreement before due diligence?
No. So what I would usually say is that you can get a sale and purchase agreement in place, but then in there put in a condition that payment will be made after the due diligence process is completed and you are satisfied with it. In fact, you can even graduate the payment, right, in your sale and purchase agreement. So you pay it in tranches as and when the, let's say, your due diligence, based on your due diligence processes. It is one of the ways by which you can reduce your losses, right? Eventually, if it turns out that, let's say, you went to the Lands Commission and they told you that the person purporting to sell the land to you is the right person. So you may end up making some payment. But then you go to court to do a search and realize that the land is contested, right? That would help you save some money. So one, get a sale and purchase agreement signed and get it done properly. And this is where you need professionals. You need a lawyer to do some, a proper sale and purchase agreement for you, right? So get the professionals to do that for you. And then I would advise that the payment should be conditioned on satisfactory evidence of ownership from the your due diligence process. Do not trust any document given to you by the vendor, because vendors can do all manner of things. Yeah. And if possible, graduate the payment if you have to make payment, because I understand that sometimes you need to make a commitment. Other than that, you might lose out on the opportunity, especially if it turns out later on that the land is genuine and it's litigation free. So you may want to make a small down payment to tie the hands of the vendor, but then that should not be a big sum that you can save yourself in the event that there are troubles with the land. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Doc. The next question here is, can state agencies be sued if it turns out the information they have given is inaccurate?
Yeah, obviously, I'm not a lawyer, but I want to believe that if you have relied on the information they gave you, right, to make a decision, then you can sue them for giving you wrong information.
All right. Thank you. So if you have relied on the information for your decision, for your investment decision, then you can take the state agency on. Having said that, I don't know how the people in the diaspora would have to go through all these to be able to purchase the land. And maybe that would be a conversation for another day. But maybe, Doc, you have something to throw some light to, maybe you want to shed some light on that, a little bit about how the people in the diaspora could purchase land. I think that's supposed to be a whole webinar session, but maybe you can say a word or two on that.
Yeah, so I would say simply that they should engage a professional. Now, who is a professional in this instance? There are two key professionals you need to engage. You need to engage a surveyor, and by a surveyor, I mean you need a land surveyor, an evaluation and estates surveyor, right? You need a land surveyor, an evaluation and an estate surveyor. So the land surveyor would help you confirm the location of the land, help you design a site plan which can be used for a search and so on and so forth. The valuation and estate surveyor is someone who is trained to help you with land acquisition, right? That person can also help you, advise you on the appropriate amount you should be paying for that parcel of land. Remember the point I made earlier on. Sometimes vendors purport to sell, for instance, land on a 99-year basis, only for you to realize that the honest part interest in the land is just 5 years. The value of the land is tied to the honest part interest in the land, right? And so the value of a 99-year lease, for instance, will be different from a 5-year lease. And so it is the valuation and estate surveyor who is in a position to help you with that. And for this, I think you might engage someone who is a member of the Ghana Institution of Surveyors, right? You might engage someone and make sure you are checking their IDs and their diploma numbers and so on to be sure that you are dealing with such a professional. And then in the drafting of contract with that, right? So yes, you need these three groups of people to help you. It will come at a cost, but I must tell you that it will be cheaper than losing the full amount of money you have paid for the value of a parcel of land. Yeah.
All right. I can see your hand, Mr. Felix. Okay, let me just allow, there are two more questions we'll have to tackle, but kindly unmute and then you ask your question and we can run through the last two questions and we can call it a day. Yeah. So, Mr. Obeng, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Godwin. Thank you, Doc. It has been an insightful one so far. My question is actually about property rate. So Doc made us understood that land is not just the bare land, but anything attached to it is also a land. So let's say I go in for a building that is on the land. I made a due diligence. I got to know that certification and everything about the building is genuine. But then you see property rates are also tied to the building on the land. And in that instance, if like the owner before I got in was owing a property rate or something, how will I make sure that I clear myself before I go in for the building, since that is not actually catch here? In here, I can see you can make searches at the Lands Commission to see if the land is actually free and I mean the planning by the loose part. But in case of property rate or anything of that sort, how do I go about that one?
Okay, so you would realize that visiting the district assembly, right, would reveal any debts in terms of property rates, right? Because it's the district assembly that levies and collects these property rates. And that can help. It's a liability. So when you read the Local Governance Act, failure to pay your property rates could lead to the confiscation of the property and the subsequent sale to recover that property rate. And so you want to avoid that. You don't want to buy a property that has accumulated property rates, which you eventually have to pay for. And so what you want to do is that once you visit the district assembly and you conduct these searches, and it turns out that there is outstanding property rates to be paid, you want to negotiate that as part of the premium you pay for the land. You get it? It's either you get the person who was already occupying the place to pay the outstanding property rates, or he reduces the price for you so that you would eventually pay for that, because it might come up later on, and chances are that you might be held responsible for that. Because think about it, it could even be the case that in the deed that is given to you, the deed, which is the lease that is written for you, the vendor might include a clause which says that you will be responsible for the payment of any outstanding property rate. You get it? And so it's important you inspect the indenture, right? Because it's in that indenture where citations will be made, and some of these clauses might be touching and maybe concerning issues of outstanding debt that is linked to the said property. So yes, visit the district assembly, get to know of the status of the property in terms of property rates. If there are debts, two things: it's either you get the vendor to pay the outstanding debts, or you negotiate that as part of the premium you have to pay for the land, and then subsequently you pay that to the assembly. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. So let me quickly run through the last 3 questions that we have here. Concerning customary lands, it is most common that most of the owners have been registered or do not have a site plan for the land. Would you advise that we can still purchase such lands? And Mr. Addo went on to say, because most of them actually own the lands, but they do not have they have not registered the lands. Yeah.
Yes. So if there is no site plan because the owning group has not registered a land with the Lands Commission, it's the very reason why you need a land surveyor to do an original survey of that, right? So it has not been registered. The Lands Commission will usually advise that the vendor registers his or her interest before he makes a transfer to you. You get it? And that will help you avoid litigation subsequently.
All right, sir. So the next question here is, for those in the diaspora, will you recommend that they buy the land from verified real estate companies who purport to be selling litigation-free land?
Okay, so I think you have answered the question. So here, you're referring to real estate companies as verified. I actually don't know what you mean by verified, but if verified means that they are legal entities that have genuine land to buy, to sell, then why not, right? Because a lot of the real estate companies do is that they go through all the diligence processes to acquire these lands. You get it? And so they may have dealt with the litigations and so on and so forth. And so if you buy those lands, chances are that you may be reducing your chances of facing a litigation in the future. But it is not the case that even the best real estate company sometimes may not have everything done well. So there isn't a guarantee, but it's just that they would have reduced your chances of getting into trouble, right? So if they are verified, then I'm sure they are good to go.
All right. If they are verified, then they are good to go. Now, assuming an institution acquires a plot of land from a stool for an estate and develop parts and leaves some parts undeveloped, can the chief re-enter and develop the plot?
That's interesting. So it would depend on so many things, right? So for instance, what kind of contract did you go into with the chief, right? You know, this issue of re-entry. For instance, if the chief told you to develop the entire parcel of land and you failed to do it, then you are in breach. And that breach may give the chief some right to re-enter that parcel of land. But if that was not the case, then the chief has entered your land illegally or has breached your quiet enjoyment of the land, which you can pursue in the court of law. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So the point is that it's the answer to this question is will usually be determined by the kind of arrangement you've entered into with the chief.
All right. Okay. So it depends on your arrangement with the chief for the re-enter to happen. Yes, I think the Lands Act also specifies a few things about re-entry. Maybe you may like to have a quick look at it to actually have the understanding of when and how a chief can re-enter your property. Thank you so much for joining today's session of the webinar. Next week, same time next week, hopefully, we will be having the next session and the topic will be communicated in due time. If we have your email, we will communicate with you via that. We'll send you an email about what the next topic is going to be, and then we can take it from there. So, Doc, I don't know if you have any last words. Aside that, then we can call this for today.
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Like I said, PropIntel LLC will be available to support you. Sometime if you want to purchase a property and you are struggling, you want some guidance, PropIntel LLC will be available. If you want to make some investment decisions in the real estate space, PropIntel will be available to give you that support. Yes, for you to make sure that you are making sound and good decisions in the real estate space. Thank you so much. Thank you. And we'll see you again next week. Yeah, thank you.